Michael Bond, what an extraordinary book. Animate, How Animals Shape the Human Mind. I didn't know what to expect. So I open the book and I start reading about the Paleolithic era and the cave paintings in the Dordogne. And I'm thinking, okay, I think I know where this book's going. I had no idea. You have the most agile mind. It clearly is stuffed with so many ideas and so much knowledge and so much experience. This book is a treasure trove of ideas and avenues taken into an exploration of what makes people, what makes animals, or are we all that separate? When you started out, did you have a particular topic and then your mind went wild, or was it wild going in?
When I started out, I knew it was going to be a difficult subject to bring under control, if you like, because there's so
Yes.
much research about animals, there's so much archaeological, anthropological evidence, there's so many theories. Everyone has their own theory about the relationship between humans and animals. I actually fairly carefully mapped it all out before I started, and the map got a little bit loose. At least it helped me keep it under control. Yeah.
What I love about it is that it's uncontrolled. It's you open, it's almost like opening a door into a magic garden, or in this case, into many different caves, and
Huh.
then taking us with you and changing the lighting and changing where the cave is and where you stand or sit or lie in the cave. The book is not just about cave paintings. Obviously, that would be a different book. But I think those of us who have had the privilege of going into one of those caves, which I did many years ago, and you and your wife Emerald, when you went, it sounded like a kind of transformative experience. Can you talk? We'll talk about the cave paintings and who, why, when, how, where that no one really does know. But what about this emotional effect on people who go in with a tabula rasa, no expectation? I'm going to go and see what this is. That was me. That was you. You went with your wife, an artist. I went with my sister, an art historian, and
Huh.
art conservationist. But you
Huh.
and I were just curious monkeys going along, right? So, what about this effect that it has on people?
I'm guessing we probably had similar experiences, Tracy, because me, I was surprised. I'd read about how people react to these ancient paintings, but I was surprised by my own reaction. And it's a mix of various things, isn't it? It's
Yes.
all the age. You're looking at something that was created by our ancestors 30 plus thousand years ago. We don't know much about them. The other thing that really struck me was just the quality
Mm-hmm.
of the paintings. You probably remember is the artwork is really as astonishing. My wife, who's an artist, she was explaining how they must have had a very good grasp of perspective and form, and they developed color and the representation of the animals and the feeling they put into the paintings is really makes everyone quite emotional.
It does, and it totally surprised me. And I don't have to remember, thank God, because one's memory is like a sieve. You have fabulous drawings in the book of many of the gorgeous cave paintings. And what does this say about humans and animals? What was their relationship to the animals? How many times were they quasi animals or depicted that way, if not in those cave paintings, in others? And your wife, the artist, and my sister, the art historian, bring up the comments you make: Chagall, Dali, Picasso, particularly Picasso. And you look at it and you think, wait a minute, this is like yesterday or tomorrow. This is the most beautiful modern art, whatever we mean by that. Not contemporary art, but modern art, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
classical, not Titian or whomever, Tintoretto, but very sleek, very
Yeah.
thoughtful. And there they are. And you talk about it being a Sistine Chapel. Talk about the person who said that. What a fascinating idea. I didn't realize that in some of these caves, the artist lay on, I guess, his or her back and painted above their own head, like the Sistine Chapel.
That's right. That's right. It gets you thinking that the question everyone asks is, why did they make the art? Question that that cannot be answered, really, isn't it?
Yes.
And the one of the guides who took us into one of the caves, he's been working there for 40 years or so, and since he was very young. And he said he's bored by the experience and always has this sense of sort of wonder whenever he takes yet another party. And the questions people ask are always the same. Why did they make it? And they're always questions that he can't answer despite his great knowledge. But yeah, we do know that they painted the animal art in some very inaccessible parts of some of the caves. They also used the structure of the caves to enhance the anatomical features of the animals. So the depictions are very clever. Who were they painting it for? Of course,
Right.
Memory, because they were painting inside the caves, and obviously they spent their lives surrounded by these animals. Why they chose particular animals to paint, mainly the big, impressive predators, rather than the animals that they ate. That's another mystery. So there are all these questions you probably remember swirling around your mind as you walk through them.
I remember it from your book. Your book is a great guide to what that experience is. I wish that I had read it, you had written it, before I went, because I was just a dummy. And I was moved by it. And of course, we modern people think, what was this? Was it someplace for worship? Was it someplace for sacrifice or rituals? There's no sign of any of that. Was it an art gallery? Hey guys, we're bored on a Saturday afternoon. Let's go in. Didn't seem like that either. This was a personal, spiritual, artistic, expressive experience. We don't know who else shared it even then. And they certainly couldn't have been doing it for posterity. They were happy if they lived another month, right? Life had to be pretty hard, right? So it's a mystery about what drew humans then to do it and what draws humans now to come see it. You do talk about a number of the caves, all of the caves now being shut. When I went, you had to have a booking well in advance, and there was a humidity gatherer that said, oops, too many people, too much breathing going on, everybody out, and there were short periods of time. Was that the truth when you went?
No, I didn't see any of that. But the difference was, as you mentioned, that only very few caves are still open to the public, and I guess they do limit the parties that they allow in at any one time. For some of the bigger caves, they've built these 3D replicas, which they sound ghastly, but they're actually extraordinary because they really are replicas, and you get the full sense and feeling of the art. So it's a little harder just to see these artworks today, but there's still enough there to make it an extraordinary experience.
One of the questions that struck me in reading, and this is only the first part of the book Animate goes so far and so wide in so many directions. We have got to talk about Therians before we end, because really? But going back to this, one thing, so there's Michael Bond and his wife Emerald, and so they're British, so okay, they went to the French caves, but then I thought, wait, France is where these caves all seem to be. Why France? And then I reread the book, because I had to do that anyway. It's so dense with ideas and facts, and it's easy to stumble over something in eagerness and go back and go, you talk about caves in Zimbabwe. So are those still visible? Did you go? Can people go?
Yeah, I didn't go to Zimbabwe. There are caves, or there is cave art, pretty much every continent,
Okay.
including North America. It's mostly younger than the art in southern France and northern Spain, but there's cave art, prehistoric art in Australia, and obviously the animals. They're not only animals, but where it's animal art, the animals are different. They come with the same level of mystery. Why were they painted? But I think the people the archaeologists who I spoke to, who visited a number of these caves in different continents, talk about one thing that really you always think about is the similarity between yourself looking at this painting and the person who painted it. That's the sense that comes across. It's easy to grasp the emotional value or content of this art and the sense of often reverence for the animals that it appears to contain. So there's a lot of common ground in
Yeah.
these all over the world.
Even more so than if you look at Egyptian tombs and what's painted on those walls. Those seem other than us. Very elaborate, very decorative, telling a story, or other such art that tells stories. This is more almost an emotional, spiritual expression by the artist. You also write about, which is, I think, something really useful for people to think about. Everyone's supposed to slow down a bit. We're all zooming too much. So there's a lot of these mindful ideas these days, right? In fact, the
Right.
New York Times has something. Look at this painting, whatever it may be, or drawing for 10 minutes. Just look at it. I just am too impatient to do it. The idea that you just should stop and look and take your time. Your book really made me do that. And you talk about coming out of the caves when at one point they're lit by candlelight to give people the sense of what it would have been like. Very dark and flickering, and the flickering makes the animals look like they're moving. But then you and your wife come out and you suddenly see animal shapes everywhere. Clouds and rock formations. Did that transformation, if you will, or that awareness stick with you, or did it fall off?
It stuck with us for a while. And I actually, when I got back to England, I did some research into this. Idolia, it's called. It's a sort of common
Oh,
affectation that people have to see patterns in everyday shapes, patterns that don't really exist. So, you know, a dragon in a cloud,
right.
for example. But I think it was very salient in our minds, but because we'd been looking at this animal art, these animals which appear to be almost living on the walls of the cave. And so we're very attuned to those forms, and we came out into the real world and they were still with us, if you like. And in a way, it reflects just the very, very long history of our close relationship with animals and how our brains have adapted to be particularly attuned to animal forms. And we don't really use that sort of level of sophistication in our interactions today because we don't need to, but our brains very much contain those sort of networks that allow us to respond very quickly. So in a way, it's no surprise that we should have these strange tendencies.
That is the subtitle, How Animals Shape the Human Mind. And in the way you're talking about, if I recall in the book, you say, because these animals could pose danger to people at the time, or dinner. They're either you're going to be their dinner or they're going to be your dinner, but you have to see them, and you have to see them soon and quickly and respond in the appropriate way, depending on which animal, where, and what you think will happen next, right?
Sure. And you can see that, if you imagine that scenario, why our propensity to be particularly responsive to animals more than any other sort of everyday object, if you like, because back in ancestral times, the people who were very quick and effective at recognizing animals, either as predator or prey, would have been more likely to survive in that environment and more likely to reproduce. So that trait would have passed on and become a sort of universal characteristic of the human brain.
Having a Hawkeye, if you will, but a human Hawkeye. So you talk about this new academic discipline, which to me is what this book is about. Visual paleo-psychology. Sounds kind of la-di-da or highfalutin, but it is really exactly what this book is about and what many of the studies that you reference. You have an enormous reference in the back. You've read every darn thing ever written or painted or drawn anywhere, any place that relates to this visual paleo-psychology. What do you mean exactly in lay terms?
I actually didn't know about the existence of this field before I
Okay.
started the book, but it's a fairly small field. It's a sort of merging of psychology and paleontology. And it is the people I spoke to are a mix of both, and they're trying to understand how people made this kind of art and what was going on in their minds, what compelled them, and also the actual process of making it. So, for example, one of the experimenters did this a mock-up of a cave in Spain on her computer. So it was an exact replica that people could walk around using virtual technology. And she then tested this on various students, volunteers, to see how they saw the cave as the artist might have seen it. So she removed all the art from this virtual representation and asked the volunteers to create their own images.
Wow.
Turned out that they often created these images in the very same places that the prehistoric artists had, accentuating the actual structure of the cave wall. So that is a sort of reinforcement of this, what we we're just talking about, this idea that humans are tuned to recognize patterns, particularly animal patterns, in random phenomena. And clearly we do today, and it's very likely our prehistoric ancestors did today. So that's the kind of thing that the visual paleo-psychologists are exploring.
So they want to understand Ice Age people with modern scientific methods.
Yeah.
Does paleo mean Ice Age, or does it mean just more like a word like archaeology?
Yeah, I think you talk paleontologists are basically interested in fossils, ancient traces of animals and humans. So they're looking at ancient evidence and using modern techniques to try and understand the psychology of ancient people and how that mirrors our own psychology, to what extent there might be similarities. There's obviously a lot of speculation in this field.
A lot. And as you said in the very beginning, no one's really come up with an answer because it is such an amorphous question. But since you're married to an artist, one has to ask, why are some people driven to make art? Why are they driven to make that when they could make money or just play on the planet, not really dedicate themselves to a task? Art is something that there are people driven to do it, and they are often called the starving artists. It doesn't matter what their circumstance, they are compelled to make art. Does that seem to be a through line in human history?
Yeah, this is way beyond my area of expertise.
No, it's not. You're right in the middle of it.
I asked this of my wife, and she suggested that most art starts with an emotion, a need to express something. And humans have been doing that, we can be fairly sure, for tens of thousands of years, perhaps hundreds of thousands of years. Why some people are more inclined to do it than others is a mystery. Perhaps you need certain skills, certain talents to enable you to do that. The other thing, amid all the speculation and the theories about why this art was made and who the artists were and why they made it, I think we can safely say something about the relationship that they felt with the animals that they painted, because in all the paintings, what really comes across is a level of sort of reverence and often awe of these animals. They're painted very sympathetically, and the animals appear to be responding in some way to the human. So you can almost feel a connection there. It's not clear exactly what kind of connection. It could have been fear, it could have been hunger, but something also beyond that. Just often it looked like sheer astonishment that came across in this art.
Like respect for them, because they have a majesty and they have motion and they have power. Galloping horses or early horses. And you're right, they didn't do the Madonna and Child. I'm kidding, of course there was no Madonna, but they didn't do a cute little scene of them in their village or their hut or their cave making dinner or weaving something. It wasn't about humans. They were really focused on animals.
It wasn't about humans. And it's interesting that in that area that I was looking at, there was probably tens of thousands of ancient cave paintings of animals, and perhaps 100, if you're lucky, of human figures. And that's another mystery. Why do they paint animals and not humans? And the humans are often not fully human. They're
That's
sort
right.
of human hybrids or enacting some very strange scene with an animal. Clearly, animals were of great importance to people of that time. Perhaps the humans, they knew about humans, but animals came with that mystery, and that sort of reverence came from that.
It was shock and awe in a good way, artistically. But before we wind up, we have to talk about the people that aren't just partly animal. But I didn't know about Therians. I knew only that in my town, there's a small liberal arts college, and there were some people there. I heard this through my goddaughter. There were some students who called themselves furries,
Right.
and they were convinced that they were furred animals. Unfortunately, they also even defecated in the dorm room and in the shower, and they hopped around or they went around on all fours. And I thought, okay, what is this, the loony bin? But you have a whole section that this is a legitimate, if you will, situation that is not considered crazy. Psychologists don't think it's crazy. These people genuinely feel and have felt their whole life like, and then you talked about going on one of these Zoom type calls, but anonymous, wolves, bears, all kinds of creatures. This is like a crazy natural progression of people's fascination with animals and then their art with animals and then quasi-human, half-human animals. So when you came upon it, you'd already written about it because you've written other books. So this was not new to you.
The furry fandom, as it's often called, that you refer to, is generally very performative. People come together at furry conventions and dress up in animal of choice. But I actually came upon the Therians, which is a completely different group, through some psychologists who were studying the furry fandom. And they said to me, look, there's this other group of people we're talking to who are not performative in that way, and you will never really hear about them because their experience is completely different. They are people who feel that they are another species in their human body. And when I say feel, I mean they literally feel physical animal inclinations. They might feel they have a tail where there is no tail, or their skin might feel like fur, or their ears might feel like animal ears. These very strange phenomena which they basically have had all their lives. They grew up, most of these Therians, not understanding why they felt this way. They still don't really understand it. But so their experience is much frightening, and you generally don't hear about them because whenever they try to tell even their families about how they feel, they're often ridiculed. But they're very functional. They're
Yeah, you write about them in the book. They have jobs, they have families, and they keep all this quite secret. But there's the man who feels paws. He feels he has bear paws. Michael, we've run out of time. This book is amazing. It covers so many aspects of humans and animals, how we're affected by them, and how people around us are affected by them in ways we didn't even know. It's a big world out there, and you gather it all together and animate how animals shape the human mind. It's extraordinary. It's fascinating. I think I might read it a third time. I have to reread the Therian thing. You're right. They felt like this their whole life. It's like a trans-human.
Yeah.
And this is in the modern day. We have to have an open mind that are there other people having a totally different experience of being human.
I mean, if you look back to the cave paintings, finally, you can see that it's quite likely people felt the same way then.
Yes, exactly. And maybe, yeah. And maybe they were depicting these animals because they felt one with them. We don't know. Anyway, It's a great book, Michael Bond. Congratulations. And I hope many people will dip into it and have their mind altered in a good way by it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy. Really appreciate it.
Take care.